Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In today's video, I want to talk about another popular AWS service called S3 or Simple Storage Service. Okay, so this video is going to have one hands-on demo of creating the S3 bucket where I will be explaining all the different options that you see on the screen when you are creating the bucket with some particular use cases as well. Okay, but before I jump onto my AWS management console to create this S3 bucket, I want to talk about some theoretical aspects of it. We should know why this service is there for and what are its benefits that we can leverage. All right, so S3 is a service that gives you object level storage in AWS. If you have watched one of my previous videos where I've spoken about different type of storages available in AWS with their use cases, so you know that we also have file level storage, we also have block level storage, and similarly we have object level storage, and each of these storage types have their different use cases. Okay, in terms of the pricing, in terms of the speed, in terms of the the security and other things. Okay, so here we are talking about object level storage. So object level storage refers to any data that does not have any specific structure. So it is all unstructured data that you want to put in a storage device. Okay, so Amazon S3 bucket is one of those storage devices. If I can compare this S3 bucket, if you have a bucket at your home, okay, that you want to fill in, so you have the option of putting different type of objects in that bucket until it fills in completely, right? So similar is the case with this S3 bucket also. So it can store any type of data. So there is no particular structure to it. Okay, like you can store your backups. So for example, it can be any backup. If you have configured your EBS volume backups, so you can store that in S3 bucket. If you have some other type of backups, in different AWS services, or if it is outside AWS also, so you can store those backups as well in S3 bucket. Okay, I'll come to that. Why do we want to do that? Okay, but just understand what type of data you can store here. Okay, then if I talk about other type of files or the things that you can store any number of audio files, you can store video files, you can store any documents, or if you have some email archive or some other type of archiving data, so you can all that can be stored in S3 bucket. If you have a static website that you want to host, so you can host this data of the website on this S3 bucket. Also in the world of DevOps, when you're using some CI/CD services in AWS, so you can store your code files, okay, your code zip files, or all the files of your application in this S3 bucket. Now let's talk about why do you want to do that. So in the world of IT, okay, when you have large amounts of data, okay, if a company is rising, it's growing, okay, year by year, so the data rises, right? It can be any data, it can be your application data, it can be your logs data. So all the data is continuously rising and at an exponential rate. So you want a place to store that data because you never know when you're going to use that. Okay, so you need a place where you can store all this rising data, which can be cost effective, it is secure, and you can retrieve the data when you need it. So if you are using AWS to deploy your applications, okay, in a company, so then you can use S3 for that reason. So you can store all the excess amount of data, all the log files that you're not sure of when you're going to use it next. Okay, and you want a cost effective and a secure storage, so it's going to be S3. So S3 is that important. Okay, so so this is just one use case. So when you have your access data and you're not sure where to put it, because you know that you're going to use it for sometime in the future, so you can use S3 buckets to do so. Okay, S3 buckets is one of the cheapest storage types, okay, in AWS that you can use. So it's going to give you a very cost effective this method to store this data. Also, it is completely secure, it is highly available, highly durable. Okay, and it is resistant to it is resistant to zone failures as well, availability zone failures. So you can create your data, you can store your data in S3 buckets, and you have some automatic backups created by AWS. So in case of any failure, okay, so you are still able to retrieve your data. So that's how this that's how great this service is. So it is one of the most important services for any company who has their infrastructure on AWS. All right. So this is how the storage works. Also, the most important thing with object level storage is the metadata, that is attached with all the objects. Because when you're trying to search for an object, okay, you have to use the name of the object. That is also called object key in S3 world. Okay, so whatever data you store, you can store it, and if you want to search it, you can search with the name of the object. Okay, and all the data is stored in an unstructured way, so there's no particular structure to it. All right, I hope the concept of S3 and why do we want to use it is clear. Okay, now let me just go to my AWS management console and show you how you can create the S3 bucket from the console, and I'm going to explain all the options as well. Okay, so here I am in my AWS management console, and this is the Amazon S3 dashboard. If you want to reach this dashboard, just in the search tab, you can type for S3, and it's going to redirect you to this dashboard here. Okay, also you can mark this, you can mark your services as favorite using this star option, and those services are going to show up here in this list. All right, so to create the S3 bucket, you have to choose create bucket. Okay, it's slightly slower. All right, so here, if you see, I'll talk about all the different things, okay, which you see on the screen. So AWS region. So whenever you create any S3 bucket, so that bucket is going to reside in one of the regions. Okay, so buckets are regional in nature. Okay, which means if you create one bucket in one region, if you change the region from here, the bucket is not going to show up in other region. Okay, so on whatever region you choose here, it's going to show up in the AWS region also when you are creating the S3 bucket, fine, which is US East 1 in my case. Then you have two types of buckets. Okay, you have a general purpose bucket, you have directory bucket. So generally, if you're not sure of different configurations of a particular S3 bucket that you want to create, you can go for the general purpose one, which is the default option. Okay, and it is actually recommended for most use cases, as it is written, most use cases and access patterns. Okay, we'll come to access patterns in a bit. Then general purpose buckets are the original S3 bucket type, because this was not there in the past. It is like a new feature that the AWS has given us. So this was the only option available in the past. Okay, so but now you have two different options. Okay, if you have some specific requirement, then you can go for directory bucket, which is recommended for low latency use cases. So of course the speed is going to be really fast of data. Okay, of accessing the data in this S3 bucket. Okay, this is because it uses this S3 Express one zone storage class. I'll come to the concept of storage class after I complete this this entire demo of creating the bucket with all the options. I'm going to cover storage classes, which is one of the most important topics from interview point of view, especially. Okay, so this directory bucket uses the one of the storage classes, which is S3 Express one zone. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to cover this general purpose one, because I just want to keep all the things as default to show you with all the options. Then bucket name. Now remember, the bucket name resides in a universal namespace, okay, which basically means that in AWS, in all the accounts across the globe, if a bucket has a particular name, so that bucket name cannot be used by any other user in their respective AWS accounts. Which means that if you just include all the S3 buckets created in all of the AWS accounts in AWS across the globe, so there can be only one bucket with one name. So this name has to be absolutely unique. Okay, for example, if I try to create one test bucket, okay, so I'm trying to create this bucket in my AWS account, right? But if I try to create it, I'll get the error. The error will be it's going to show up a bucket with the same name already exists. So this name has to be absolutely unique. Okay, so I hope this name is unique. So I'm using this. Okay, a test bucket hyphen tech applicate. Next, you have the option to choose some settings from existing bucket if you want to. Okay, so you have this option, but here in my case, I don't have any S3 buckets as of now. All right, so I'm not going to choose this option. Next is object ownership. Now, by default, when you create an S3 bucket, only the bucket owner will own the bucket and its objects that you store inside the bucket. Okay, so in my case, I'm using this AWS account, so this is the default access permissions for any S3 bucket. Okay, and this is the recommended way as well. So if you want to allow some other AWS accounts to access your bucket, you can choose the concept of ACLs in S3, which is also called access control list. Okay, so you can enable the ACLs from here, and then you can choose different options once again. So even if you choose ACLs as here, you also get the option to choose a different ownership type. Okay, if I talk about this bucket owner preferred, if new objects return to this bucket specify the bucket owner full control canned ACL, they are owned by the bucket owner, otherwise they are owned by the object writer. So which means that if you are choosing ACLs in object ownership in S3, okay, and if you are using this option bucket owner preferred, it means that unless and until you are specifying this ACL attached to the objects, which is bucket owner full control canned ACL, the object will be owned by the object writer. So the AWS account which is using to upload the objects to will be the owner. Okay, or if you want to just have object writer only as the owner of the object, then you can go for this option. Okay, but once again, this is like I'm not the recommended way to control the access to an S3 bucket and its object. So we generally go for ACLs, and all the control is actually controlled by all the access is controlled by IAM. So you can get IAM users with their granular permissions to access any S3 bucket. Okay, with all the different permissions. Also, you have the option of controlling the access to an S3 bucket using S3 bucket policies, which are also called resource policies. Okay, we'll come to that when I explain all the different options that are available, but I just wanted to let you know that this is the most recommended and the default way to create an S3 bucket. Okay, unless you have some specific requirement of using ACLs. Next is, so if you see when I use this option, you get the object ownership as bucket owner enforced. Okay, so I am the bucket owner in this AWS account, so I am the owner by default. Okay, then block public access settings for this bucket. So by default, all the public access to an S3 bucket is default, is blocked by default. But if you want to enable this public access, you can just uncheck this option. Okay, then you have these different ACLs as well that you want to that you can use to control what kind of access you want to allow. But if you want to just block all the public access to this S3 bucket, just choose this option here, which is the default option. Okay, next is bucket versioning. Now when you upload objects to an S3 bucket, you have the option to upload the object with the same name multiple times. Okay, so if you want to keep all the versions of a particular object, then you can enable bucket versioning, which means that all the objects with different content to it, okay, but with the same name, so all will be uploaded with their this version details. Okay, but once again, if you store more content in an S3 bucket, it's going to increase your AWS bill as well. So I mean, you have to be really careful. So by default, this option is disabled, but if you want to have this option, you have the capability in AWS. Okay, so you can enable bucket versioning if you want to. Next is tags. You can add tags as you do with any other AWS resource, right? So you can add tags to it. Then default encryption. So if I talk about encryption in short, or in a very a basic way, so encryption is a way by which you scramble some piece of data. It can be any data. Okay, scrambling means that you just try to convert the real data into something called as ciphertext, which means that you have just changed how the data actually looks. Okay, so you use it, I mean, you do it using something called as algorithms, which is actually like a mathematical model. So you have the option to encrypt some data, which means that you are applying some mathematical models as part of certain algorithms to scramble the data to a different form, and then you create an access key and attach to that data. So whosoever has access to that key will be able to unscramble the data and see the real data. So this is how encryption works on a very high level. So you have the option to encrypt your objects that you store within an S3 bucket. Okay, so by default, you get this server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed keys, which means that you can choose this option and all the encryption is being handled by Amazon S3. Okay, so they're going to create their own keys and perform the encryption. But you do have other type of encryptions available as well. So you can use the KMS service to create the keys and encrypt the data, or you also have the dual layer service, this server side encryption with AWS key management service. Once again, so there are 3 different options available for encryption. I mean, you can learn more about this part while going on to this and just reading through it, and also you can use these different links to understand more details about it. But I just want to make you understand that the default option is this server side encryption, where AWS S3 is going to manage the encryption keys for you. Okay, but you do have options to have other type of encryption enabled on an S3 bucket. Okay, so this is a way to secure your data on one more level. Okay, so this is like one more extra layer of protection that you can attach to objects that you store in an S3 bucket. Then bucket key. Okay, so once again, if you use this option, then AWS S3 is going to create its own key. Okay, so that is why you see this option as enabled here, or you can disable it and you can create your own key and encrypt the data. It's up to you. So once again, it is type of an advanced concept in S3, but you do have the different options of encryption available. Then if I go to advanced settings here, you have the option of object lock. Now, if you have some sensitive information, some critical information that you are storing in your S3 bucket, okay, while working on some project, you want to store some sensitive information. So in that case, you can use object lock to completely protect that particular object or a list of objects from any modification or deletion or overwritten. So you can use this object lock feature to lock some object for a particular time period or indefinitely. Okay, all that is available using the object lock option. Fine. The next is so let's try to create the bucket now. We have seen all the options here. Okay, now let's try to create the bucket. One more thing, when you are using this object lock, you have to enable versioning. Okay, so versioning is mandatory to use object lock feature in AWS. Okay, all right, so I created my first S3 bucket. Okay, here as you can see, if you click on this bucket, you will see some different options as well that are now visible. Okay, so at the time of creation, you don't get all these options available, but once you create the bucket, you get these a list of different options as well. The first thing is to upload objects. Okay, now once again, I'm using my own account, which is the bucket owner account. So I will be able to upload the objects, okay, from this account. So if I click on upload here in the object section, I can upload my first object. Add files, and I can just upload this file called index.html, which is a test file, and I can click on upload. Okay, so this is how you can upload your objects simply by using the upload option, as you do on any other website while uploading your images, or it can be anything. So similarly, you can upload any number of objects here. It can store any number of objects. So this one bucket. Okay, now if I go to metadata, okay, so I'll just walk you through all the different tabs and different options available now to understand this S3 bucket in deep. Okay, so if I go to metadata, so this is like a new feature that I have recently come up, and it is actually used to dynamically store the object's information in an S3 bucket. So if you delete the object, this metadata is going to this metadata feature is going to delete that particular name of the objects, and it's going to update the table. So when you use this metadata feature, you are able to create a dynamic table of all the names of the different objects that you store in a particular object. So it is basically used for machine learning and artificial intelligence use cases. Okay, so I myself haven't used it, frankly speaking. Okay, but this is a very good way if you are using some data for machine learning or AI projects. So you can utilize this metadata feature. Okay, but if you see right now, I don't have access to it. Even though I am logged in as the root user, I still don't have access to this particular tab. Okay, I'm not sure if this is a deliberate effort from AWS, or is it a bug, but we can try to fix it. Okay, so if you see in the error message, it says that you don't have permission to get the metadata configuration after updating your IAM permissions to allow S3 get bucket metadata table configuration. Refresh this page. So right now, even with this root account, I don't have the access to this particular IAM policy, which is S3 get bucket metadata table configuration. Okay, and this is the API response. So user ARN AWS, this root user is not authorized to perform this operation on the resource. This is the name of my S3 bucket. Okay, this is the ARN of my S3 bucket, because no identity based IAM policy is attached to it. Okay, so let's try to fix it. So in any S3 bucket, if you want to enable or disable some access, okay, you have to go to this permissions tab here. Okay, so just go to permissions here, and here you have the option to control the access via the bucket policies, as you can see here. Okay, so what you can do is you can click on this edit option, and then you can click on this policy generator option to generate the option from the UI, because you don't have to memorize the JSON format of the IAM policies. Okay, of the IAM policies or the bucket policies. You can use this policy generator UI to generate the policy for you. So if you click on it, you will get to this option, and all I need is, okay, let's see. So here you can generate a bucket policy for yourself. Okay, so I want to generate a policy for S3, so you can use S3 bucket policy. Scroll down, I want to allow something. Okay, because I want to allow access. This principal is going to be who wants to access this bucket. So for that, I'll go to my bucket again, and I will go to metadata, and I will click on this API response to get the name of the principal. The principal is going to be this, which is the root user, which wants to access this metadata table. So just go to this policy generator S3 bucket policy. In principle, just copy and paste the ARN of the root user. Then here you can choose the actions. Okay, so I want S3 get metadata, which is get bucket metadata. Just confirm the name. So it's going to be S3 get bucket metadata. Okay, so S3 get bucket metadata will be here. So this is what I want to have enabled in my root user. Okay, I want to have access to this get bucket metadata table configuration. So once I do that, I can choose the name of the resource on which this action should be applied, which is going to be the name of my S3 bucket. To get the name of your S3 bucket, you can either go to this properties option and copy the ARN, but here you can see the name in the API response also. You can just copy this name from here. This is the name of the bucket. Go here and copy and paste the ARN of the resource that you want this principal to access using this action. Okay, so this policy is saying that this principal or this user can perform this action, okay, which is allow action on this resource. Just click on add statement. Okay, and you can see the policy here. So you can click on this generate policy and it's going to generate the policy for you in JSON format. Okay, all you have to do is just copy from here and paste it in your this permissions and this bucket policy section. Here bucket policy, edit and paste, and then just save changes. So this is how simple it is to generate a policy and attach it to your bucket to change its access permissions. Okay, now if I go to metadata, I will be able to see the details. Okay, so this is how I was able to access this metadata section here now. Okay, after I change the permission. Okay, pretty simple. All right, so this is done. Metadata, I already spoke about this, how you can use this service. Now let's go to properties section. So in properties, you can see the name of the AWS region in which the bucket resides, which I already told you. You get the name of the S3 bucket, which is Amazon resource name or ARN of the bucket. Okay, so if you want to use this bucket anywhere, you can copy this ARN to refer to this particular bucket. Then the creation date. Then I've already spoken about this bucket versioning feature, so you can enable it if you want to from here. You also have the option to enable multi-factor authentication or MFA delete, which means that if you have some particular objects that are pretty critical to you, once again you're storing some sensitive information probably, and you want to try to protect it, so you can use MFA delete option, which means that only and only using the MFA feature you will be able to delete those objects. Okay, so you have all that option here available. You can enable it from the edit section. Then tags, you can add some more metadata to your S3 bucket. Okay, it can be the name of the project, the environment, or the name of the application, the creator, or it can be anything depending on the type of project you are working in. So you can add all those tags in here. Then encryption, I already spoke about. So we have chosen this default encryption option, but you do have the option to use other two encryption types as well. Okay, and encryption, I already told you what it means. Then intelligent tiering archive configurations. I'm going to come to that after I explain you the concept of different storage classes in S3, which is very important topic, which I'm going to cover after I complete this demo. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this after that. Then server access logging, which means that whatever logs are being generated, whatever requests are coming to your this S3 bucket, so you can create a log of that in CloudWatch using CloudWatch logs, and you can do all the investigation or all the analysis on your S3 bucket. So you can do that using this server access logging feature, okay, which is disabled by default. So you don't have any logging enabled by default, because it's going to enable it's going to incur some cost. Okay, so whatever things you add here, it's going to incur some cost or the other on your S3 bucket. So it's going to increase your AWS bill. So whatever option you choose, you have to be really careful. So AWS CloudTrail data events. So CloudTrail is like a detective service in AWS that can be used to identify any unauthorized access. So you can track the unauthorized API calls or any activity that you think is not usual. So you can track all that using CloudTrail. So you can enable these CloudTrail data events on your S3 buckets as well, to have a track of all the API requests that are coming to your bucket. And if you want to do some analysis, some investigation, or if you are working on some security project, so you can use that here. So you can enable this CloudTrail data events on your bucket, and then you can get all that data to do that type of analysis or investigation on your S3 bucket. Now let's talk about event notifications. So for any particular event that happens in your S3 bucket, for example, uploading of an object or deleting of an object or modification of an object, you can create an event-based notification as well. So you can get some notifications on an email for any event that happens in your S3 bucket using this event notification option. Okay. All right. So next is Amazon Event Bridge. So Event Bridge is a service that uses events to configure some action in your AWS account. For example, suppose you have uploaded an object to S3 bucket, and it's a file which is in Spanish language. Okay. Now you want to configure something which can automatically translate this document in Spanish to English. So you can use this Amazon Event Bridge to do that. How? You can specify the events in Event Bridge that each time a new file which with Spanish language is uploaded to this S3 bucket, it's going to invoke a Lambda function to translate that file from Spanish to English. This is one of the use cases. Okay, there can be many other, but I'm just giving you a very random one, that how you can use Event Bridge to configure some specific action depending on a particular event that happens in your S3 bucket. So okay, so in this case you are using S3 bucket, Event Bridge, and Lambda function to perform some function automatically. Okay, the next is transfer acceleration. So transfer acceleration is once again a very important feature. So it's a feature which is used to upload speeds of your objects to an S3 bucket. Okay, so if you enable it, it's going to increase the upload speeds. So basically, if I talk about use cases, if you are uploading objects in the size of GB bytes or terabytes, you have huge data that you're trying to upload to an S3 bucket, you can enable transfer acceleration. So how this actually works in the backend? So transfer acceleration is going to use another service in AWS, which is called CloudFront, which is a content delivery network or a CDN service. So this CDN service creates its own distributed network. Okay, this distributed network has edge locations around the globe. Okay, so from wherever you are trying to upload the object to this object, that object will be uploaded to these edge locations first, and from there it's going to be uploaded to the S3 bucket. So this is going to increase the upload speeds. Okay, so this is how this transfer acceleration works, but as I mentioned, only in cases where you are trying to upload some huge data, some huge files to your S3 bucket, you're going to use it, else you won't need it. All right, then object lock, I have already spoken about. It uses write once read only model or form model, which basically means that you are able to write the object once and then you can only read it. If you enable object locking on your feature, so it's going to be protected from deleting or overwriting. Okay, or you also have the option to choose for how many days, for how much time you want to keep this object lock enabled. Okay, either for a specified time or indefinitely. You have all this option in object lock feature. Okay, then requester pays. So when you enable requester pays, it means that the requester is going to pay for the cost of the request and also for the data that is going to be downloaded from the bucket. Okay, but just understand that the bucket owner is always going to pay for storing the data in your bucket. Okay, so requester only pays for the cost of the request and the data that he or she is trying to download. Okay, so I mean, you can enable this feature to have that segregation of your S3 bills. Okay, where your requester pays for downloading the data from the bucket, but the object owner always pays for storing the object to the bucket. Okay, all right. Then next is static website hosting. So at the start of the video, I spoke about you can host some static data of a particular website on this S3 bucket. So this is the way to do it. So you can enable this static website hosting. If I click on this edit option here, if I enable this static website hosting, you get the option of hosting a static website, which means that you have to at least upload one file to it, which is index.html file. Okay, so all the HTML data can be uploaded to this S3 bucket, and then you can use it to access the website on this S3 bucket. Okay, I had done one project in my previous organization on this. So I mean, I'll try to come up with that project with all the step-by-step instructions, and all the projects that I'm talking about. These projects are real-time projects that you can actually include in your resume, and you can explain in an interview. Okay, interviewer is going to be really impressed with you if you're able to explain these different type of projects. Okay, so I'll try to come up with one video on that project which I did in my previous organization using this S3 static website hosting option. All right, so you can do that. You can enable this option, and you can store your HTML static files here, and then you can host a website on this S3 bucket. Okay, also you have the option to redirect the request for an object to a different S3 bucket. Okay, so once again, there are two options. Okay, but I've used this host a static website option, but you do have another option to redirect the request to another S3 bucket also using this same option of static website hosting. Okay, so this is about this properties part. Now let's go to permissions. So in permissions, we have already spoken about that by default all the public access to the website is going to be blocked, but you can always change that whenever you want it. So you can just click on the edit option, you can delete this, and you can save it, and this bucket is going to be public. Okay, next, if I talk about this bucket policy, which I just showed you a demo of, so you can control the access on resource level. Okay, so these bucket policies are going to control the access to a particular bucket only, right? So that is why these are called the bucket policies, because you are specifying all the permissions on a particular bucket and you attach it directly to the bucket only. Okay, so in this way, which I just showed you, so you can control the permissions. Then object ownership, we have already spoken about. Okay, by default it's going to be the AWS account that has created the bucket. It's going to have all the permissions, which is the default way of controlling the access, and all the access you can control via IAM users or the bucket policies. Then if you want to enable this bucket to be accessed from other AWS accounts, you can use the concept of ACLs, which is not a recommended way. Okay, then one more important concept is cross origin resource sharing, CORS. So CORS is a way by which you can enable some particular domains, some particular host names to access your particular website. Sorry, to access your S3 buckets. Okay, so if I click on this edit option here, okay, here you can write the CORS configuration, which is in the JSON format. Okay, if I give you some idea into this CORS, because this is one of the most important things in AWS in S3, it is often asked in interview also. What do you understand by CORS? So CORS is a way by which you can define some particular domains to access your S3 bucket. Okay, with some specified permissions. So it is a way to enable some domain to access your S3 bucket. Okay, how? Let me show you the example. If I go this option, yeah, here. So here you can see, so this is the type of JSON that gets, that you can create, okay, and that you can attach to your S3 bucket in this course configuration here in your S3 bucket. Okay, so if you see here, so this is the way to do it. So suppose you have this particular origin that you want to allow the access on your S3 bucket, so you can just specify like this, and all the methods that can be allowed also, it's given here, get, put, post, and delete. And what are the different headers that you want to expose, all those also can be given in the course configuration. So this is the way to enable this course configuration on a particular S3 bucket. And once again, there are different elements to it that you can go for, that you can use. So for that, you have to refer to the course configuration document here, and you can see all the different options that you can use to control the course configuration on your S3 bucket. Okay, let's come out of it. Course is done. Now let's go to the other tab, which is metrics. So metrics, as I just said, if you enable CloudWatch, you're going to see all the different metrics enabled on your S3 bucket. Okay, like the total bucket size, total number of objects. You also have the option of storage class analysis. Storage classes I'm going to cover after I cover this demo, which is a very, once again, a very important part of this S3 bucket from interview point of view especially. Okay, then replication metrics, you can also replicate your this number of objects. Okay, so if I click on this view replication rules, you can get this replication rule, and you get the option to copy the objects. Okay, copy the objects from here to another S3 bucket in this account or another account. So it's a way to replicate the objects from one bucket to the other, either in the same account or to the other AWS account. For that, you can use replication rules. Fine. Right, let's go back. Let's go to the bucket itself and go to metrics. Okay, replication rules is done. Storage class I'll cover. Then management. In management, you have the option of, once again, a very important thing, lifecycle configuration. Okay, so lifecycle, once again, it is relating to storage classes. Okay, so I'm going to cover this after I cover storage class. Okay, I'll come to this option once again. Replication rules, I just told you. Inventory configuration is like a list of all the objects metadata that you can store. Okay, so once again, you can create one inventory configuration which you can later utilize with other applications or other resources. Okay, if you want to use it. So it's a way by which you can store all the metadata of the object stored in the particular object. Okay, in a static way, basically. Okay, so you can do that using inventory configurations. Then access point. You also have the option to control the access to this bucket on a network. So you can create the network endpoints. Okay, so you can get these network endpoints to control the access to your S3 bucket. For example, if I click on this create access point, so you can name the access point like access point 1, and then you have the option to how you want to access this particular bucket on a network, either within a VPC or on internet. Okay, so so you can create this access point within the VPC, or you can create it on a public network also. So when you do that, of course, you have to disable this public or block all public access option. So you have to enable the S3 bucket to have the public access, and then you can create your own access policy as well. In what access you want to have this access point enabled on this S3 bucket, so you can control all that using this access policy. And here you have the policy examples that you can refer to. Okay, once again, it's a way to control the access to the S3 bucket on a network, right? So that's all about the different objects, the different features, the different use cases that you can use with different fields. I hope this was useful to you. All right. Now let's talk about storage classes in AWS S3. Okay, for storage classes. Okay. Before I go there, I just want to give you some more details of S3 bucket. So S3 bucket or S3 service is highly scalable. It is highly available. It is highly secure, and it is highly performant. Okay. Some of the use cases that is given on AWS's documentation is you can use S3 buckets for data lakes, for websites, for mobile applications, for backup and restore, which we already saw, archiving, enterprise applications, okay, IoT devices, machine learning, and big data analytics. Okay. Then storage tiers. So I've given this particular URL that I want you all to go through. Okay, it's very important. And here I've already opened this here. So I want to talk about these different storage classes. So what happens when you store any object in S3? It is stored in a particular storage class. Okay. The default storage class is called S3 standard. Okay. So when you store any object in a bucket without choosing any storage class, it's going to be stored in S3 standard, which is the default one. Okay. Now each storage class has its own features. Okay, features and different prices as well. Okay, so S3 standard is the most expensive one because it is the best storage class that you can use with S3 bucket. Okay, but also it is the most expensive one. If I talk about the features, so it is designed for frequently accessed data. So if you have some data that you want to store in S3 bucket which is accessed more than once a month, and you want to access the data you want to access the data very fast, okay, very quickly. In that case, you can go for S3 standard, okay, because it's going to give you the millisecond latency to access the data. So it depends on that. Okay, so these storage classes depends on how frequent you want to access the data, okay, and how much cost you want to pay it for. Okay, so it depends on those. So here, as you can see, it is used for frequently accessed data only, and you're going to get the millisecond access to the objects in this S3 bucket when you use this option. Then if I talk about this durability, it is also called 11 nines durability. Okay, if you see 99 dot, then 99 is 11 times, so it is called 11 nines durability. Okay, which is a very important question. Once again, from interview point of view, you should know the meaning of this 11 nines, which means that the data is 99.9999999% durable when you store your objects in S3 bucket. Also, it is highly available, so you get 99.99% availability of your data. Also, the data, as I mentioned, is backed up in at least 3 availability zones, or more than 3, it depends on the region. So when you use S3 standard, your data is backed up in at least 3 availability zones. So if one availability zone goes down, you still have your data available in 2 other availability zones. If another availability zone goes down, you still have your data in at least 1 availability zone. Okay, so this is the feature of using this storage class. Then minimum storage duration, you're not bound to for how much longer you want to keep a particular data in a particular in S3 standard storage class. So you don't have that restriction in S3 standard storage class. Then minimum billable object. So here you can see just call it like this. Yeah, so here you can see there's no minimum amount of data that you will be charged for when you store your data in S3 standard. All right, so these are some of the features and benefits of using S3 standard, which is the default one. If I talk about other ones quickly, so you have S3 standard IA, or infrequently accessed. So if you have some long-lived infrequently accessed data which you still access once a month, but you want to access it with millisecond latency, so you can use the S3 standard IA. IA is going to be slightly cheaper than S3 standard. Why? Because there are some differences to it. If you see here, minimum storage duration is 30 days. So you have to, once you upload the data with S3 standard IA storage class, the data is going to be stored for at least 30 days. And you are charged for at least 128 KB of data, which means that even if you store like 1 KB of data in S3 standard IA, you are still going to be charged for 128 KB of data. Okay, so all these things have to be considered when I'm choosing the right storage class for your objects. Then also the per GB retrieval fees also applies. So when you're retrieving the data from S3 bucket to access it, additional fees will be applied to your objects. Okay, similarly you have S3 intelligent tiering. Okay, intelligent tiering is a way by which automatically AWS can help you identify the right storage class for your objects depending on the access patterns of the S3 objects. Okay, so if you have some data with unknown, changing or unpredictable access patterns, you can go for S3 intelligent tiering. Okay, once again it's going to be highly available, highly durable. Okay, highly durable, highly available. You also get the availability zone backup to at least three availability zones. Okay, you're not bound to for how long you want to keep the data in this storage class. Okay, you're not bound to for how much data you will be charged, the minimum. Okay, also, but some monitoring fee is applied. Okay, so if I just scroll it slightly more, yeah, here you can see. So if you're using intelligent tiering, some monitoring and automation fees will be applied per object basis. Okay, but there's no retrieval fee here. Okay, so once again it depends on your particular use case, particular project where you want to store objects in. If you have some data that you not sure in which storage class you want to keep, you can use this storage you can use this intelligent tiering storage class, which is going to decide on the access patterns of the object in which storage class it should be kept. Okay, but once again you have to take in consideration all these different features and benefits of a particular storage class. Then you have S3 one zone infrequently accessed. So it already says one zone, which means there's no backup of the data available. So the data is stored only in one availability zone within the bucket. Okay, so any recreatable infrequently accessed data which is accessed once a month and you want to access it, you want to have access to it quickly with millisecond latency, you can go for S3 one zone infrequently accessed storage class. You get the same durability and you get 99.5% availability this time, and then availability zone, it's only be stored in it will only be stored in one availability zone. So there's no backup to your data. If your availability zone fails, your data is gone. Then your data has to be stored for at least 30 days and you're going to be charged for 128 KB of data minimum. Then also you have the per GB retrieval fee supply. Okay, which is and it is not resilient to the loss of the availability zone, as the availability zone is only one. Then this S3 Express one zone, which I spoke about, if you remember from our demo video. So when you are trying to create the bucket, you got two options. One is the general purpose, the other one was S3 Express one zone directory based S3 bucket, which means that you get single digit millisecond data access for latency sensitive applications. So once again it's going to be super fast, so that's why the name is there, Express. Okay, so if you want to if you have some application where you want some you want the data to be accessed very quickly. Okay, so in that case you can go for S3 Express one zone, but once again you don't have the backup of the data in other availability zones, but you do have the high durability and 99.95 availability of the data. Okay, S3 one zone, objects are stored in single AWS availability zone that you choose. Then S3 Glacier instant retrieval. So long-lived archive data accessed once a quarter, which means once in every 3 months. Okay, so if you have some data that is accessed once in every 3 months, you can use this S3 Glacier instant retrieval. Okay, and of course the cost is going to be slightly lower than other storage classes that we have spoken here. Okay, but of course it depends on your use case. So here, as you can see, the data is at least stored for 90 days and you're at least charged for 128 KB of data, and you also have per GB retrieval fees here. Okay, similarly you have this S3 Glacier flexible retrieval, long-lived archive data accessed once a year. So if you have some data that is only accessed once a year, okay, like your logs, okay, so basically your old application logs you can store with this, or the other option also. Okay, so if you have some data like that, you can store it in this storage class. And yep, so if you see here, you get the same durability, 99.99% availability after you restore the objects, and you also have the availability zone failure covered here. Okay, so you get the you get your data to 3 availability zones at least, and but you are charged for at least 90 days of this data, and there is no minimum storage charges. Okay, and the per GB retrieval fee also applies. All right, and then similarly you have this S3 Glacier Deep Archive, which is actually used for some data that is not used at all, or like once a year, or maybe I will say like, I mean, once in every 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. Okay, so for that you can use S3 Glacier Deep Archive. This is one of the cheapest storage classes in S3 that you can go for, but of course the data retrieval time is in hours. Okay, so if you have, when you want to access the data, you have to wait for few minutes to few hours, okay, to get your data back. So that is the a drawback with this type of storage tier. Okay, and also it's going to be the cheapest one. So that is the benefit of using this, okay, to save a lot of cost. So if you see here, you have to store this data for at least 180 days, which means for at least 6 months your data will stay here. You cannot change the storage class once you store the data in this storage class for 180 days. Okay, then you also have this per GB retrieval fees applied, but you must first restore the archived objects before you can access them. Okay, and the same feature was there for other storage class as well. S3 Glacier flexible retrieval also, you have to store the object first, okay, restore the object first before you can actually access it. So restoring in these two storage classes takes a lot of time. Okay, that's why it is given here that the data will not be accessed instantly. It will take some time. It can take from minutes to hours depending on how huge the data is that you want to restore. Okay, then this reduced redundancy storage, it is not used anymore, but it's like a legacy storage tier that that was there, and as you can see, not recommended. Okay, so for all the non-critical frequently accessed data with millisecond access, you can use this feature, but it is not recommended anymore because we have other new storage classes available with us. So this is once again a very important topic. Okay, please, go through this. It is often asked in interviews, what are different S3 storage classes, and give us some examples and use cases of it. So you should be prepared for this interview question. Okay, all right. This is all about this storage tier. Now let's go back to my AWS Management Console to give you the to explain the two options that were left. If you remember, first one is in properties, you get the option of intelligent tiering archive configurations. Okay, the meaning of this is, okay, so by default intelligent tiering uses frequently accessed and infrequently accessed storage classes, but if you want to enable it for other storage tiers as well, like this deep archive or archiving access with your intelligent tiering, so for that you have to use this option, which means that you want to include the frequently accessed, the infrequently accessed storage tier. Along with that, you also want to include the archiving and deep archiving storage tier, okay, for all your objects. In that case, you can create this intelligent tiering archiving configuration. If you click on create configuration, you will see the option. So you get the option to choose the other two storage classes as well for your objects. So in this case, this intelligent tiering configuration is going to use the access patterns of your objects, and it's going to choose between these four these four different storage tiers to store your objects from time to time. So now you can have these four storage classes included in your intelligent tiering configuration instead of 2, which is default one. Okay, so that's why this configuration is there for. Now if I talk about the lifecycle rules, which is also one of the very important things from interview point of view especially. Okay, what are lifecycle rules in S3? So lifecycle rules in S3 is a way by which you can change the storage tier, okay, of your objects from time to time. For example, you know there are some objects which are going to be accessed like once a month, okay, and after the month it's not going to be accessed for the next 1 year. So in that case, you can create a lifecycle rule that is going to place your objects after 30 days from frequently accessed data to infrequently accessed data or deep archiving data depending on your configuration. For example, if I click on this create lifecycle rule here, you can use the lifecycle rule. Let's name it as LR1, lifecycle rule 1, and let's apply it to all objects in the bucket. I acknowledge, and then you can choose a lifecycle rule options. Okay, so if you say a transition current versions of the objects between storage classes, or you can transition the non-current version. So suppose you have some objects that have versioning enabled on them. Okay, so you have the option to use these different options to choose how you want to change the storage class of your objects from time to time depending on your use case. Okay, you also have the option to expire the objects. For example, you know that there are some objects that you are uploading and you don't want those objects after 90 days. So you have the option to expire the objects, which means that those objects will be automatically deleted from the S3 bucket, which is going to save some cost for you. Okay, so if you use that option, you have the option to choose for after how many days the object should be deleted. Okay, so in this way you can create these different lifecycle lifecycle configuration for your objects to change the storage tier or to expire the objects also. Okay, so this is the use case of these lifecycle rules. Okay, once again, it is very important from interview point of view that that you know what is the meaning of these lifecycle rules and how to use them, or if you can give one use case of this. Okay, so if I talk about a particular use case here, I can talk about logs. Suppose you are storing some logs in this S3 bucket that you know that the logs are not required after 60 days. Okay, so you can use this lifecycle configuration to create a lifecycle rule to expire those log objects after 90 days. Okay, all right guys, I think I've covered most of the things. Okay, if some of the things you didn't understand or I didn't explain it well, please reach out to me in the comment section. Okay, I'm going to explain it again, or I'm going to give you more information on that. Okay, so I've tried my best to cover all the different features with the different use cases and features. Okay, along with the storage classes, which is also very important. Okay, to cover in this video. I hope you liked it. All right, and yeah, if you really liked it, please hit the like button. Please share this video with your friends and colleagues or anyone who wants to make a career in cloud and DevOps world. Okay, and please do subscribe to my channel. Okay, to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. All right guys, that's all I wanted to cover, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye.